Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well. When people create content, they do it for one of only a handful of reasons. It may be that they want to entertain people. It might be because they want to educate people. It may be that they just want to earn money or popularity. The issue when you cover true crime and cases like the Bryan Kohberger case, those lines can become incredibly blurred. And what could be perceived as the hunt, the search, the pursuit of justice can actually be a pursuit for something far more nefarious. And that simply is a pursuit to follow where the money leads you. Now, I think it's fair to say that anybody at this time who would even dare to consider that Bryan Kohberger may be innocent of the Idaho 4 murders are perhaps not doing things for money or popularity, because we are certainly people who are on the outside of the main narrative and the main herd, if you like. Because I think it's safe to say that the vast majority of people have Bryan Kohberger pinned as guilty. And look, I get that. I completely get it, because there is out in the media many things that would lead people to believe that Bryan Kohberger is indeed the person who done this crime. The problem is this, is when you compare what has come out since the gag order and deciphering whether that is from a true and trusted source or it's something that comes from media. And when it comes from media, whether it's been a recycled piece of information that has been jazzed up to look as damning as it possibly can. Let's not forget that ultimately when people create content, they are trying to get to viewers, to hold their attention, to shock people at shock value, so it gains momentum. And the downside is when you do a video that absolutely destroys a person for some reason, that will very quickly become viral. So my take on the Bryan Kohberger situation is this, and that is that we do currently have a guy who there are some questionable things around him, and he could very much be the person who did this. The problem lies here, however, and that is that much of what is being pushed on social media platforms is not fact. It is embellishments of stories that were earlier brought into the limelight on channels such as News Nation or perhaps in Fox News. The story of the colleague who had things moved around in the apartment and she went to Bryan Kohberger for help and assistance. That story has been twisted into a potential fact that he is the person who indeed broke into the house and installed cameras in order to watch over her. We see multiple stories where these seem to come from sources, but these sources are never told. We don't hear who these sources are. We're just told that someone has come forward and someone has said this or someone has shown us that. And these people are all people who are able to show things that solidify the mainstream media's direction. You don't hear anybody coming out and saying something completely supportive or something that would lead you to believe that there is a potential for Bryan to have perhaps been caught up in something bigger than just him. I don't think there could be questions as to whether Bryan Kohberger had connections to 1122 King Road. I do feel that there's somewhere along the line, I've said this multiple times, he is connected somehow, some way to 1122 King Road. My underlying worry, however, is if he is the only one. If he is the only one connected to this crime. If this crime was done by one sole person. I just wonder whether people have got so much invested in the crucifixion of Bryan before he's had his day in court, that they're unwilling to accept that there are elements of this case and things that are equally coming out on the peripheral that would lead you to believe that there was perhaps something else going on. Remember, we still do not have motive. We do not know why these people lost their lives, and yet we're trying to understand how this PhD student who was doing a doctorate all of a sudden up sticks one day and drove over to Moscow out of a state which doesn't have capital punishment as an option into another state that does, and brutally kills 4 students in their home without even considering how he knew he could get in there, that they would be there. Who would be in there? Was he not walking into a house, like I've said, with 20 people in it, because this house was renowned as being a party house, and this was a night that you would have considered it could have been full of people? Cars that were hunted for early on that did not match his car in the descriptions that were given by law enforcement. It just happened to be close to Bryan Kohberger's car, and the abundance of these cars in this area. How many people do you think in Moscow, Idaho have access to or own or rent a white Hyundai Elantra? And like I say, I'm not trying to say that Bryan Kohberger's not involved. I'm just trying to understand what channels like News Nation and these documentary style things like Dateline are truly trying to push. And people coming out like Papa Roger, this account, it's proven that it's Bryan Kohberger, it's proven. Look at the things that he said. These specific things are definitely Bryan Kohberger, because nobody could have known that first. And yet, if you fucking open your eyes and look and do your research, do your homework, you will see that the things they are using and utilising are things that he wasn't even the first person to say. Even the Papa Rogers account was recycling stuff that was already existing on social media. I just want there to be a pursuit for justice, not a pursuit for money, clicks and views. A pursuit for fairness, so that if someone has done something, they can go through due process and the right questions are asked and the right person or people are punished. And not an outcome that has been spurned by media hype, the trial by media, the witch hunts. What happened to people's ability to understand that everybody is due a fair trial, a fair crack of the whip? And if you want to consider all these things, then consider those as well. It's a strange world we live in. It's a strange world we live in, but we do live in a world where there are evil people, and Bryan Kohberger could indeed be an evil person, but he could also be part of a network of evil people. He could also be completely innocent. Who knows? And perhaps because of this shit show, will we ever truly know? Will we ever really know? All we can hope is, despite all of this, despite everything that's being pushed on the likes of YouTube, that can all be pushed to the side, and actually in the core will be where we get to the meat and potatoes. And on that note, enjoy the rest of your weekend. My days off were fucked. I'll see you all tomorrow.